10 years ago when you said Donald Trump was an authoritarian. And you know what, Scott, I've got to hand it to you. That was a remarkable forecast because 10 years later, I think you called it. Here's Donald Trump today, the man with the heart and soul of a fascist, showing us he now has the bona fides by tonight.
This is Petriot Pulse, where silence meets strategy and spin gets shut down. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and comment. Today's breakdown comes from a heated moment. On CNN, the kind of exchange where the talking points fall apart and the mask slips a little. I came across this debate featuring Scott Jennings and Miles Taylor, and let me tell you, the back and forth is something you need to see all the way through. Moments like these reveal far more about the media narrative than the headline ever does. What stood out to me was how quickly the conversation escalated, and how confidently each side tried to frame the story. It's one of those segments where you watch the spin happening in real time, and it becomes a perfect example of how these networks shape political conflict for their audience. And if you're enjoying this breakdown so far, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps push these videos to more viewers who want straight commentary without all the noise. Now, let's get into exactly what happened on that panel and why it matters.
It's happened tonight. Buckle up. Marjorie Taylor Greene is learning what it feels like to be on Trump's bad side. She has been one of the most vocal Republicans calling for the full release of the Justice Department's investigative files on Jeffrey Epstein. And now President Trump tonight is unendorsing. He is withdrawing his endorsement of Marjorie Taylor Greene and writing on Truth Social that all I see wacky Marjorie do is complain. And then he added that I can't take a ranting lunatic's call every day. There was a lot there. So you can go, and then talking about a lot, then MTG fired back with screenshots of text messages that she claims where she claims that Trump is lying and that she did not call him, also saying that it is astonishing, really, how hard he is fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out. She argued that she has been one of Trump's strongest supporters, but that she doesn't, quote, worship or serve Donald Trump. On top of unendorsing, he actually said that he would support anyone who would be primarying her in the upcoming election. Who wants to take this one on?
Well, I can tell you that is not unusual in politics. Political romances are often short-lived. And she has been critical of him not only about the Epstein files, but about his involvement in foreign affairs. And I don't mean with women. I mean in various parts of the world. And
you said it, no.
just to clear the table on that one. and so it's not surprising that they have had a breakup of sorts. After all, he didn't give her a ring. He just supported her for a little while.
Listen, this fire is spreading. I mean, right, it started off talking about Epstein in the beginning. Then during the shutdown, she was one of the few Republicans to correctly identify Donald Trump's unwillingness to deal with the ACA subsidies and lower healthcare costs for Americans as being one of the reasons why the shutdown occurred.
Yeah, she was very outspoken about that.
Now she's talking about foreign policy. This is not going away. Whatever is going on between them seems to only be heating up, and I think the rest of us should get the popcorn.
I think they're here for it.
And a war with words, sorry, Scott, a war with words with Donald Trump is such a risky business that I cannot believe she has the bravery to engage in it, because even if she was right, she's still going to lose.
Is there an example of anyone beating Donald Trump at this game?
Never. This is his game, and he's great at it, and she's barking up a tree that she's going to fall on her really hard.
You know, it's interesting. He has some people who profess to be strong supporters who do oppose him more often than the people that you might not think are his strongest supporters. She's one of them. Thomas Massie in Kentucky is another one. Rand Paul, my home state senator, he takes on Trump, although they profess to be Trump supporters. In this case, I think he had the order out of order. I trace all this back to his decision, the righteous decision to strike Iran. She was against it. So were some of the people who occupy that wing of the party. He defied them. And since that time, they all seem to be stridently picking at him on this issue or that. And then, of course, everybody knows in Washington, Miles, you know, the fastest way to get in front of a television camera if you're a Republican is to come out and crap on Donald Trump. And so that is what she is doing. But, you know, Scott, that is what she is doing because she is mad at him over these issues, and that's what happens.
When Scott Jennings made his point on the panel, the pushback came fast. But let's slow down and look at what was actually being argued. The response tried to frame Scott's take as some attempt to rebrand reality, especially when it comes to Marjorie Taylor Greene's criticism of the former administration. But here's the thing, calling MTGA clout chaser doesn't really fit the facts, and pretending that Republican lawmakers attack their own leadership for attention just doesn't line up with how the political landscape actually works. The claim that speaking out against a Republican president is the quickest path to fame is simply not accurate. We've watched for years how Republicans who broke with party leadership, whether you agree with them or not, didn't get rewarded. They lost primaries. They were pushed out of committee positions. Some lost their seats entirely. Just look at Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. It wasn't TV time they walked into, it was the political wilderness. And another point worth mentioning, members of Congress are supposed to debate policy. That's their job, whether it's foreign policy, healthcare, or anything else. Disagreement isn't disloyalty, it's part of governance. Treating every policy difference as betrayal only feeds into media narratives that try to reduce every issue to personal loyalty tests instead of real debate. But what really stands out is how the argument shifts toward morality rather than substance. Instead of examining whether a foreign policy decision was right for the country, the response tries to turn the discussion into a loyalty critique, as if supporting or questioning a military. The decision is purely about who signed the order rather than what the order actually accomplished. This is exactly how political commentary in the media gets distorted. Instead of discussing strategy, national security, or congressional oversight, we end up talking about personalities and motives, and that doesn't help anybody understand what's actually at stake. At the end of the day, it's perfectly reasonable for Republicans to disagree with each other on policy without being painted as opportunists or traitors. Healthy political movements make room for debate. It's the media that often insists on turning every disagreement into a spectacle. If you're finding this breakdown useful, make sure to hit that like button. It helps push Petriot Pulse into the feeds of more viewers who want thoughtful, conservative commentary without the noise.
Scott, I trace it further back than that. I trace it back to 10 years ago when you said Donald Trump was an authoritarian. And you know what, Scott, I've got to hand it to you. That was a remarkable forecast because 10 years later, I think you called it. Here's Donald Trump today, the man with the heart and soul of a fascist, showing us he now has the bona fides. By tonight, ordering investigations into American citizens. That's why members of his party, that's why members of his
Why are you so upset he's running the executive branch?
For the same reasons you predicted he shouldn't. For the same reasons, Scott, you said he violated his oath and he should never be back in that office. That's why I'm upset for the man being in the Oval Office.
I happily voted for him 3 times.
I know that.
The alternative was terrible.
And a lot of your friends were shocked.
Yeah, well, a lot of my friends would have been shocked at you trying to subvert the elected president of the United States, which you did.
Well, I proudly did. I proudly
Some
said
mid-level
to the
staffer
country
substituting his judgment for the elected president of the United States.
Well, Scott, I would have loved to have seen you stand up to it.
Good luck.
Back to
Gotcha moment. But when you slow it down, it's clear that the exchange was designed more for television, drama, than genuine substance. Miles Taylor jumped in with the kind of emotional pushback that CNN loves to spotlight, claiming he was simply holding Scott accountable for statements made a decade ago. But the bigger picture is far more layered than the way it was presented in the moment. Miles tried to position himself as the voice of moral clarity, bringing up past warnings, past predictions, and past concerns, but all of that conveniently ignores the political environment of those years, the foreign policy realities of the time, and the unprecedented pressures that shaped the decisions being discussed. Politics isn't static. Context matters. And revisiting old comments without acknowledging how circumstances evolved is a tactic we see often in cable news debates. He also framed Scott's past concerns as if they were ironclad prophecies that now justify whatever criticism Miles wants to levy today, but pointing to a decade-old comment as absolute proof of something in the present oversimplifies everything. Conservative voters know that you can disagree with a leader on certain issues while still believing that in the larger picture, they were the best option for the country. That's not hypocrisy, that's reality. Every president has flaws. Every administration faces tough calls. Supporting a leader, despite Disagreements is not the same thing as endorsing every single move they make. Miles also shifted the discussion toward loyalty tests, trying to cast himself as some brave defender of the Constitution, while painting anyone who disagrees with his angle as morally compromised. But his argument leans heavily on personal interpretation, rather than the broader institutional debate that was happening at the time. And when he dismissed Scott's rebuttal by framing it as an attack on a mid-level staffer, it only highlighted how much of this exchange was about optics, not principle. A core point gets lost in all the back and forth in politics. People argue, disagree, reassess, and refine their views as events unfold. That's normal. What isn't normal is pretending that one person's interpretation is the only valid benchmark of patriotism or constitutional duty. And when Miles suggested that his actions were acts of courage, while implying that others fell short, that's a narrative choice, not an objective truth. Standing up for your beliefs is admirable, but so is acknowledging that complex political decisions don't always fit neatly into the dramatic.
GG. Is it the sign of a changing tide? Is it the sign, or is it a singular one back and forth between one Republican who is getting into a fight with Donald Trump? Or do you think there is a possibility that it is the beginnings of Republicans seeing past the Donald Trump era?
The short answer is that we don't know.
Because you've got like Thomas Massey saying exactly that. Like, your vote on this discharge petition is going to outlast Donald Trump's time here. So you need to consider that when you make your decision.
But if we keep paying attention, what we see is that last week, the president got his clock clean in an election. All the Republicans got their clock clean in an election. This week, we see what's happening with the Epstein files. So next week, we're going to see them take a vote. And if we see a bunch of Republicans defect on the Epstein files, I think what we're seeing is the real testing of the waters to find out whether or not you can oppose Donald Trump and still get elected. When we talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, the one thing we haven't talked about yet is her fundraising prowess. And according to sources, she is the most popular fundraiser in the Republican Party other than Donald Trump.
She's
If that's the case, they're going to divide up.
This prediction about no one's going to care about this.
I was asking it a question. I wasn't predicting it.
No, you said people were somebody said that this was going to outlive.
Tom Massey.
And the prediction that this was going to outlive. I totally disagree with that. I think right now more people are worried about whether they can watch ESPN on YouTube TV tomorrow than they care about this. And that's certainly going to be true in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years from today.
Hold on, but what they do care about, they did not get their clocks cleaned last week.
They do care about the fact the president is sort of breaking everything. Right? They see a hole in the White House right now. I was in Detroit last weekend for an event, and it was the number one thing people came up to me at the scholarship dinner to ask about. Is it okay for the president to tear down the White House without anybody's permission?
That was the number one thing?
That was the number one thing that people brought up unprovoked.
Ridiculous.
To find out about.
I keep hearing this over and over again. It's like, no one cares about this because they only care about that.
You know what they care about? They can't buy a house.
That they can't afford. They care about affordability.
Houses aren't unaffordable and that food costs too much, but they don't care about the White House. The fact is, a president who can't model the White House.
Many people care about the White House.
That's ridiculous.
Many Americans care about the White House. You don't care about the White House.
Can't remodel a room in the White House.
He remodeled it. He tore it down.
Tomato. In the middle of a government shutdown.
I couldn't tear down my garage without getting a permit from the city.
And that's
But let me ask you this.
When the debate shifted to the issue of changes being made to the White House, the panel's reaction got surprisingly heated. Betsy tried to downplay the entire situation by comparing it to the routine maintenance that happens in the building every year. But that comparison doesn't really hold up when you look at the facts. There's a clear distinction between normal upkeep, repainting, repairs, scheduled updates, and structural changes happening outside the usual preservation process. The White House isn't just another building. It's a national landmark, a piece of American history. And yes, there are rules, oversight, and long-standing committees involved whenever anything significant is altered. That's not bureaucracy for the sake of paperwork. It's about protecting a symbol that belongs to the entire country. And here's the thing. Americans can care about more than one issue at the same time. People are dealing with inflation, housing costs, and grocery prices that keep climbing. That's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean they stop caring about how the nation's most Important institutions are being handled, suggesting that citizens should ignore one. Concern because another exists paints a false picture of how voters think. People don't want their daily lives made harder, and they also want their government and its landmarks treated with respect, transparency, and proper procedure. That's why the argument of nobody cares falls apart so quickly. When people at events are asking questions about what's happening in the White House, unprompted, that tells you the concern is real. Dismissing that doesn't make it go away. It just makes it look like someone is trying to shut down conversations that are worth having. And the more the comparison gets framed as, it's just remodeling, the more obvious it becomes that the point is being cited. Every administration updates the building, but they do it through the established channels. That's the precedent. That's the expectation. When those standards aren't followed, people notice, and rightfully so. This whole exchange is a reminder of how quickly political debates can turn into distraction games. When the substance can't be defended, the easiest strategy is to minimize, redirect, or pretend the concern isn't legitimate. But Americans aren't buying that. They know the difference between routine, maintenance, and something that doesn't follow the usual playbook. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps. Petriot Pulse reach more viewers who want clarity, not distraction.